Tell me about grief and what is the state of grief and how does that play into all of this stuff? I guess that's by definition after the event? Not always.
Not never.
Okay.
No. Well, one of the ways to talk about something is by talking about what it isn't. And that's how it can become manifest in a different way than we're accustomed to. So you finger the edges of its absence, and that begins to articulate a woundedness. And you recognize the wound, and from that you recognize what caused it, and then you're in a different understanding. So grief's not a feeling. That's the big thing. Grief is usually mistaken for something on the same sort of general plane as despair and depression and hopelessness and da-da-da-da. And nobody's looking forward to it. Nobody's trying to get good at it. Nobody goes to grief school, right? They go to school for how not to grieve. So, if grief were a feeling, then its principal attribute would be that it would be transitory, which all feelings are. Feelings are weather, you know. They're not architecture. They're the weather. Comes, goes, as it should. Even the deepest feelings you have are transient, because you don't have them all the time. Yeah? But grief, though, grief stays. When you become a practitioner of grief, it stays. Now, you don't get invited to many parties, I can tell you from personal experience, if you become a practitioner of grief. But your understanding of love is renovated for all time. And here's what it is, to me. You could say, what's the relationship between grief and love? Well, if you're in love, you don't have any grief. What? Has your love included another human at any time in the proceedings? If it has, you know that's a lie. If you're in love, grief will be part of the deal. And you'll mistake that for being the end of love if you're a rookie in these matters. You could come to your third marriage still thinking that, and you'll be into your fourth marriage before you know it. If you're insisting that these two things have to be kept separate, that the only way love can burn away is that grief is burned off, right? So we get together in order not to be lonely, and that our loneliness is more acute than at any time when we were by ourselves. Yeah. So it could be that these are twins and not adversaries at all. That they're not designed to annihilate the other one, or to replace it, or to make it obsolete. They are there to see to it that the other one appears, which is what twins do by virtue of the resemblance. And only one of them's in the room, but you kind of know what the other one looks like. Just from that. That's how I understand it. To put it in a phrase, which is going to sound a little formulaic and clever, maybe. You could say that grief is a way of loving that which has slipped from view. Grief is a way of loving. I don't think many people would be challenged by that. You wouldn't grieve something that you didn't have some love attachment to, I'm sure. Not just people. I mean, times of your life, favorite cities that you were obliged to leave. You know, there's a lot of ways of understanding this. But I'm going to do this with it in hopes that the relationship between them becomes more full and more apparent. So if grief is a way of loving that which has slipped from view, then it must stand that love is a way of grieving that which has not yet done so. Love is the willingness to love, finally understanding that your love of this will not extend its days by one. So you're going to have to find another reason to love this person or this time or this city or this moment in your life without adding to it to legitimize loving it. In other words, love becomes a recognition of its temporariness. And you love the temporariness too. And that's grown-up stuff. And there's just no training in the popular kind of romance culture, you know, where everything is just sort of glandular satisfaction, you know. And as soon as it's not that anymore and there's too much work involved and all that, grief is a way of loving, but love's a way of grieving too.